The Summer Davos Forum has been held in China yearly since 2007. This year's forum recently took place from September 9th. A variety of discussions were held under the theme, Charting a New Course for Growth in 6 major topics, which included scientific innovation, environmental conservation, and economic uncertainty.
What's most important is the forum is not a conference organizer. Even if meetings play a very important role, because they provide the basis for creating trust and confidence. You can speak out, but the forum is an ongoing process. So we have many initiatives, and our meetings, therefore, practically all the sessions here have been prepared through task forces, will be followed up. So it's an ongoing process. I take, for example, we have a big initiative on the future of the internet, because the internet is in some ways a live stream for the economy of tomorrow. So we have about 20 people in Geneva working all the time. But not only those 20 people, we have engaged business, we have engaged governments on a long-term basis. So I would say 20% of our activities are devoted to conferences, but 80% is the work which is done behind.
Jack Ma, the executive chairman of Alibaba Group, was one of the speakers that garnered the most attention. He stressed the significance of EWTO, or Electronic WTO, as a new international organization to control internet-based industries in the future.
We know that WTO was great in the past 20 years, but WTO was the organization governed by government. And I think all the government not always agree with each other. If the government do not agree with each other, the business people got puzzled. What are we going to do?
Frozen.
It's frozen. We don't know what to do. So the Doha meeting we've been discussing more than 10 years go nowhere, because WTO was the treaty agreed by the government. So we should have, at the internet time, should have an EWTO. That it's a treaty agreed by business people, supported by government. And that would probably do better. And I think the past 20 years, because the WTO, the globalization was for big companies, for big countries. Next 20 years, the internet, with the help of the internet, we should use the internet to help the small business, help the developing nations. This is what I call the EWTO.
1,700 entrepreneurs and government officials from 90 different countries participated in the forum. It came to an end after discussions on global challenges, along with measures to promote economic development around the world.
Energy matters a lot for Northeast Asia. That's because this is the region that consumes the largest amount of energy around the world. Take an example of oil consumption. China is world's #1, Japan #3, Korea #5. And that's one of the reasons why in recent events like this one, Summer World Economic Forum in Dalian, China, they're talking a lot about energy cooperation and energy security. And that is also a reason why in today's edition of Upfront, we'll be talking about what's happening in this broad issue area on Frontlines.
With the rapid economic growth, Asia has become one of the biggest energy-consuming regions in the world. According to a report from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Northeast Asia takes up about 20% of global oil consumption. Korea, China, and Japan are among the world's top 10 oil-consuming economies. Ensuring stable energy supply is a key issue in the Asian energy sector, which entered a new phase following the UN Climate Change Conference held in Peru, December last year. At the conference, 196 countries agreed to work together to deal with climate change. And during the APEC summit held before the conference, China, a country notorious for its reluctance to reduce carbon emissions, agreed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions along with the US. President Park Geun-hye also proposed her vision and actions to deal with climate change through the keynote speech she delivered at the UN Climate Summit.
Next year, we will become the first Asian country to implement a nationwide emissions trading scheme. We will also let frugal consumers sell saved electricity back to the grid. So we are doing our best to enlist everyone in reducing our carbon footprint.
In line with the global trend to reduce the carbon emissions, Asia is now reducing energy consumption while fostering renewable energy industries. From Korea, that imports about 96% of its total energy consumption, to Japan, with expanded oil and gas imports following the Fukushima disaster and suspension of its nuclear power plants, and China, which continues to develop rapidly. Countries are coming to terms with the changed energy environment, realizing the need to bolster regional energy cooperation through various measures. Even as its economy grows rapidly, Asia is inherently exposed to the lack of energy security as well as environmental issues. On today's Upfront, we discuss the issues of energy security and cooperation within the international community as it strives to achieve sustainable growth.
Okay, for this important topic of discussion, we are joined by a very prominent guest today, as always. First of all, Professor Kim Sang-hyup from the KAIST Graduate School of Green Growth, and also perhaps the main architect of Korea's idea of green growth as well. We're expecting a lot from you today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And also, we have a Managing Director, Pak Yong-duk of International Energy Cooperation Group at the Korea Energy Economics Institute. Welcome.
Thank you.
And also, we have Chairman Kim Hee-jip, who's co-chairing the Korea Energy New Business Committee of the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, let's start with the overall background or backdrop of what we are talking about. That is the global energy market. Should we say, what are some of the major trends of the global energy market these days that you can think of, perhaps? Anything?
Maybe the fossil fuel and the non-fossil fuel is a big issue in the global energy market because the new climate regime is the most important issue. Before that, we were focusing on the kind of the supply side, but after the climate change encountering, then we focus more about the demand side too. So then that kind of the fossil and the non-fossil fuel is kind of the big trend, the kind of the how to mix, how to balance. Both that is a very big issue in the global energy market.
I think that's very important. Transition from the fossil fuel to non-fossil fuel because of the climate change cooperation. Professor Kim Hee-jip, what would you add as a trend?
Sure. I think there are three basic fundamental trends in energy industry right now. The first one is low oil price, the fluctuation of oil price as you have seen. The oil price has dropped about 60% for 1 year now.
Right.
So there is a significant increase of uncertainty. Second point, as he mentioned, there's a greenhouse gas reduction effort, climate change effort that Korea submitted about 37% reduction plan, which is a big step. And also the continuous technology innovation is going on. I think those are three major trends I see.
That's one of the reasons why we just had our background changing fast with all the reports about major trend here. Professor Kim Sang-hyup, what would you add in terms of a major trend that we should keep in mind?
Well, there are many major issues in the energy market. But if I have to single out just one thing, I would say climate change. The climate change is the biggest challenge of our times, threatening a whole civilization. And as you know, IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, most scientific international body or organization, concluded climate change is directly related to human activity, anthropogenic, which means climate change is closely linked to the usage of energy,
fuels, right.
especially deep dependence on fossil fuel.
Right.
To address this important issue, there will be a big and historical meeting in Paris at the end of this year called as COP21 or Conference of Parties.
Right.
And one of the most important agenda of that meeting would be how to build up new energy system, low carbon, low emission energy system. That is going to be really, really important.
I think for that particular issue, Northeast Asian countries, including Korea, will have a lot to do in terms of clarifying what our future visions are. So let's talk about the Northeast Asian major economies and what they care about most. For years, in recent years, we've been caring a lot about so-called energy security. So overall, what's the idea of energy security? We heard a lot about it, particularly during the previous administration, and also somewhat a lot, I suppose, during this administration as well. What's the idea of energy security, and why is it important, and why is it a serious matter we have to care about?
Well, by definition, energy means, the original meaning of energy means activity.
Right.
Energy is a thing that makes things happen. So
without energy, we cannot do anything.
Yes, yes. It's obviously, energy is directly related to our life itself. So, and especially for a country like Korea, which imports roughly almost 100%, to be more specific, more than 96% of energy comes from abroad. We don't have natural resources. So it is highly, highly linked to security issue. Right.
So security as a matter of survival, I suppose.
Matter of survival, exactly.
Right. Yes.
So then whenever we think about the energy security issue, we think about the oil crisis.
Right.
Yeah, because at the time that we can feel the kind of seriousness about energy security. But right now, fortunately, we do not concern about the kind of quantity issue. I mean, the supply quantity is kind of very reliable and very stable. But the more concern is kind of the price fluctuation, volatility of the price. So then we think that, we think that the price is very low now, but that can be higher in the very short time.
That's right.
So that kind of the fluctuation is a big threat to the global energy market.
And so what can we say in terms of Korea, China, and Japan trying to reduce the so-called energy dependency overseas market? Professor Kim, what can we say? What have we been doing to reduce the dependency on foreign oil and then also reduce the energy, vulnerability?
So far, not much. And I think this is a great opportunity for three countries. Securing energy has been actually one of the major reasons of even war. But now I think securing energy is a great opportunity area for three countries. We can work together. China, they are short of energy sources for a long time, but they have a vast resources of renewables, wind, solar, photovoltaic. They have the land. And Japan and Korea also big importer of oil and gas, and we actually paying the Asian premium, meaning that we are paying more than any other countries in the world.
Is it because of the distance that the oil supply has to travel?
The one reason was the distance, but actually the reason that we didn't cooperate enough. So this is a great opportunity. China, Japan, and Korea, we can work together. We can remove the Asian premium, and we can work together as a common buyer. So we can exercise bigger purchasing power together. So that's one area we can collaborate.
While China has been the #1 consumer of oil, Japan #3, Korea #5, we've been acting more individually. So the power of purchaser could not be fully exercised, you were saying.
That is correct. We worked as a separate buyers. We actually competed on the same products. And I think it's a great opportunity for us. We can collaborate together. Then we can remove the Asian premium that we are paying more than anyone else.
That's a wonderful idea. Professor Kim Sang-hyup, during the previous administration and in the past, Korea has been trying a lot in terms of reducing the dependency overseas in terms of our energy supply. What has been some of the major trends in terms of what we've been trying to do?
Before I answer to your question, I'd like to add some more on the Far East Asian issue. Let me give you a big picture. The three countries, China, Japan, Korea, or Korea, Japan, and China, the population of these three countries amount to 20% of the global population.
I suppose, right.
And economy is almost the same, 21, 22%. But when it comes to energy consumption, it's more than 28%. And when it comes to CO2 emission, it's almost 35%, which means there is a great room for improvement and cooperation. And recently I attended a CJK Cooperation Dialogue, China, Japan, Korea. That's the name of the
China,
conference.
Japan, Korea, CJK, right?
Yeah, CJK Dialogue. And one of the hottest topic was how to enhance green cooperation.
So this is not only about reducing the import vulnerability, but also reducing overall the, the gas emission.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, already China is the biggest player in terms of renewables. And Japan is one of the most energy efficient country in the world. And Korea is in between those two countries. The positive side, well, you can call it Korea as being sandwiched or not crackered, but if you take a positive side, Korea can play a bridging role.
Right, coordinator.
Yes, so there's a great opportunity and potential for the three countries to work together for a new energy system.
Right.
The energy dependency of the three countries is not just the economic situation, but also the price problem. My point is, in every country needs energy to push the economic growth. The problem is how to achieve that with least expensive one. So then that is the solution is we import.
Right.
And because even though we try to find out that our energy source by ourselves is more expensive, it's economically it's not feasible. It's not wise idea.
Right.
So then
at this point.
At this point.
Right.
So then the Korea, Japan is resource poor countries. In that case, we need to find out how to find out the least expensive way to get the energy resource to provide economic growth. Also, China too. Before the 2003, China is a kind of exporting country, but China is achieved a very rapid economic growth.
Right.
That's why China needs so huge amount of energy. That's why they they try to find out the overseas the resources.
Right.
So then at this moment, trying to reduce the energy dependency is important, but more important thing is
price.
How to find out least expensive way to provide enough energy to each economy.
Well, the price sensibility, of course, is critical for economic efficiency and economic growth and all that kind of stuff. Right. But your point is totally important when we focus on the current condition, because we want to be an efficient producer of goods and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, don't we have to be mindful of the technology progress and then have our eyes on the future, keeping in mind what will be actually an energy source that will make better sense in the future, meaning that attention to the renewable energy as well. Professor Kim, what can we say about what Korea has been trying to do for the longer term?
Actually, that's an excellent comment, because that's the direction that Korea is taking at this point. Recently, we submit 37% greenhouse gas reduction plan. And to achieve that aggressive target, Korea has to make serious changes. And one of the change Korean government decided to do is making a lot of efforts on energy new industry generation. That is more focused on renewable energies, especially probably wind and solar, which doesn't create any greenhouse gas.
Right. But very expensive at this time.
Well, it's expensive at this point, but the cost is reducing rapidly, and we believe that in certain areas and certain items will be economical. So with the carbon pricing together and those renewable energy credit that government is providing, now several projects are becoming very economical for us. So I think this is a kind of a tipping point where we are moving toward the renewable energy and new energy industry.
Since you're talking about the renewable energy getting cheaper and more economical, what has been happening very briefly about the solar energy part? There has been a lot of fluctuation in the global market, for the past year or two. And also, I'm curious about the wind energy as well, the turbine cost and all that. Very briefly, what has been happening?
The main reason for the kind of a big change in the renewable energy market globally is China.
China?
China is the biggest reason for that kind of the big change in the renewable energy market because the manufacturing facility is so huge, and then they produce the very huge quantity.
Economies of scale.
Right, something like that.
Producing a lot, buying a lot, therefore price has to go down.
Yeah. So then at first they want to export to the Europe, export to the North America, but shortly they face some kind of the resistance from the European and the American companies for kind of price. The Professor Kim said the rapid decrease of the price is that kind of the big problem for the companies in Europe and America.
Are you saying if Chinese products are getting cheaper dramatically, they could actually drive out other players in other countries?
Something like that.
Oh, okay.
So then they face some kind of the retaliatory tariff or both. So then they changed the direction, not overseas but the domestic. So then in the 12th five-year plan in China, they put so much emphasis on the domestic renewable market.
I see.
So then the wind market or the solar market capacity is so huge. Kind of in terms of the wind market is 100 million kilowatt in capacity. It's a very huge.
And they have enough land anyway, right?
Right, enough land. Also, one more thing is that still they have some kind of very centralized government. So then if the government wants something, they can do it.
I see.
But the other countries, not so like that.
That's really fascinating story, actually. I wish we can spend more time on that Chinese strategy and the resistance from global market. But since you're talking about the government role here, let's talk a little bit about these two major countries that are heavily influenced by government role, China and Russia. Like last year, I remember Putin and Xi Jinping, they were talking about like a gas supply to China. And then this year, in a recent parade in Beijing, some people were expecting some kind of signing of an MOU or agreement, but it didn't happen. What's happening between China and Russia?
We can say that last year, the May, Russia and China made some kind of the contract about the East Siberian gas supply.
Okay.
Yeah, but this year, the contract is West Siberian gas.
They switched from east to west?
No, yeah, so then they have two kind of route. That means that Russia has a very huge resource of gas. So then at first they wanted East Siberian gas supply. Then they have another pipeline, they suggest, that is West Siberian. So then the last year already, per year, 38 BCM for 30 years. That is a last year contract.
Okay.
And then this year, everybody expect like the recent contract is 30 BCM for 30 years. That is West Siberian. But unfortunately, that contract is not finalized.
I see.
So then recently, there is one more suggestion for the Sakhalin PNG. In the Sakhalin is a Far East. So then the 15 BCM for 30 years, they have another suggestion from Russian side. So that means right now, Russia provided three kind of suggestion. One is already contract. The two is a kind of promising contract.
One thing I'm curious about, the Russian gas supply, do they already, Russia I'm talking about, does Russia already have all the facilities of production in place, or is this like something like roll-on base, meaning that after they sign an agreement, they will build their development facility and then get get the gas and then supply. What's going on? Do they have already the facilities in place?
Yeah, gas industry is a very unique one comparing to the oil, because the gas supply facilities need a huge investment in advance.
I see, right.
So that's why they prefer the long-term contract.
That's why they're talking about 30 years.
Yeah, something like that. So then after the contract they start. Then, but the other things is even in the Sakhalin,
right.
there is many the development project. But among them, one project is focusing on the China, like the China. So then we think that Russia tried to find out the alternative consumer to European, because
they have situation in Europe,
right.
Ukraine and all that.
Right.
Kind of stuff,
so then they focus on the eastern side, in the especially China,
right.
and also not just China, but also the Korea and Japan.
Peninsula, right.
Yeah. Also
Japan,
that they think that they are the potential consumer to the Russian gas.
And there comes the issue of North Korea, perhaps. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah,
later.
Yeah, Russia also has great interest, not with just China, but also with Korea and Japan. Whenever Mr. Putin, the Russian president, have meetings with the Korean president,
Right.
he always points out three things: building railroad network, and building gas pipeline,
Right.
and building power grid in this area. All these
That's correct.
three elements will create huge business opportunities also.
We want to talk about the power grid in depth because this is a very fascinating idea.
Okay.
We'll do that later part of
Right.
this program here. But so far we've been talking about overall cooperation in the region and what's happening, what the key issues are regionally and globally. Let's take a look at the video about the Summer World Economic Forum that took place in Dalian, China recently, and then let's see what they had to say about the energy cooperation and energy security. And after that, we'll move on to a bigger issue of green growth right after this.
During the session titled Asia's Energy Options at the Summer Davos Forum in Dalian, 4 panel members from Korea, China, Mongolia, and India discussed the remaining challenges and future of their energy industries.
What? Not necessarily. If you look at the number for the first 6 months of China's energy number, the coal dropped by 8.3%. So that's good news for everyone that China will be first time in roughly 20 to 30 years, the CO2 emission will be negative, not positive. Of course, I'm not saying that this is going to be peak for CO2. We still commit to peak CO2 at 2030. But I say that it's quite not necessary. That judgment is not necessarily true. And also, if you look at the renewable energy, for 6 months increased by 16%. So therefore, it really depends on how government guide the public and private sectors toward cleaner and also lower carbon development path.
China, one of the biggest energy consumers in the world, stressed the viability of negative carbon emissions after a few decades.
And that's why exactly we are trying to address this issue. First of all, renewable energy. Mongolia has plenty of resources of this kind of energy. For example, we have starting from 270 days to 300 days, sunny days. And also 10% of this West Mongolian territory is very good, excellent condition for wind energy, and the installed capacity of over 1,100 gigawatt capacity. And that's why this renewable sector is going to be one option.
And Mongolia emphasized that the country has a favorable natural environment for developing renewable energy sources.
Well, I see that India has a great potentiality, and the requirement of the energy, which is very big. And I've been talking to many Chinese companies that how this is an opportunity time where you should come in India, bring the technology and manufacture in China, where the demand of the power is so much over there that we are short of power, and we need huge different technologies to come from all around the world. Now there is a big rush from America, from Germany, from France, from China, from Korea, you know, from Italy. Everybody is entering into the country.
I mean, I think as it was well publicized, I think Korea set a very ambitious target of carbon reduction. And I think Korean government just released a very ambitious target of increasing the percentage of renewables to double digits within a decade or so. And I think especially because Korea, as you mentioned, is very resource constrained, and we have been investing a lot into R&D. And I think especially our strength in semiconductors and display manufacturing has been transformed into manufacturing know-how for solar panels as well. Well, so I think although the Korean market itself is still relatively small compared to China or India, I think throughout Asia, I think especially in China and India, we have a lot to contribute in terms of manufacturing innovation and also in bringing solutions.
Among a variety of topics related to Asia's energy industry, the most deeply discussed was technological cooperation among countries, accounting for differences in their respective energy environments.
Professor Kim Sang-hyup, I understand when we talk about the overall green growth, the idea itself is very critical because it kind of like sets a new direction of energy policy for Korea as it's different from the past. Briefly explain to us what it means.
Thank you for raising that question. Well, typically or traditionally, Korean energy policy has been focusing on
supply and demand?
Supply and demand management, especially securing energy supply with a reasonable price.
Right.
That is good, but we need to do more things because energy is itself as the most important, biggest industry in the world. And I'm happy to let you know this government, under the slogan of creative economy, is focusing on making new business chances, opportunities in addressing business energy industries.
Right.
So, for example, well, one of the vulnerability of renewable is intermittence. We cannot rely on wind power, solar power. When the wind blows does not.
They're not there all the time.
Yeah, when the sun does not shine, good.
Does that mean we need a storage of energy?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why we need the energy storage system. And when it comes to energy storage system, Korean companies are leading the world market, amounting more than 40%.
Okay.
So we have a big advantage in building up new energy system.
So that's why overall the idea of green growth opens up a new economy.
Right.
It's not only about energy supply and demand, but it's much bigger in scope.
And a very funny thing is happening now in Jeju Island. You know, Jeju has a great wind resource. So Governor Won Hee-jong is pledging that he is going to replace all the energy sources, fossil fuel energy sources to renewables.
I see.
By the year 2030. So there will be no fossil fuels by the time.
Okay.
Only run by renewable gas. And then all the vehicles will be replaced by electric vehicle. And all these things are supported by a huge energy storage system.
Right.
And also it will be enabled by smart grid.
Interesting.
So it is making a totally new energy ecosystem that can be expandable and replicable around the world.
Right.
So we are getting close to a new big chance.
Interesting idea because Jeju Island itself has a limited amount of land, and when we talk about renewable energy, I often think about the wind and solar panels, and if the island is covered with wind turbine and the solar panels, what happens to all these great sizing areas and all that? I'm just thinking China must have a great advantage because they have huge land, and the United States, the huge desert area and all that. And I wonder, we should find ways in terms of technology development where we don't need as much of land mass for renewable energy in the even longer term future. But that's subject of discussion in another show, I suppose. Let's get back to with that very important point about the overall scene setting here, about what green growth means. Let's talk about the more immediate issue that has bearing on what happens in Paris at the end of this year. That is Korea kind of introducing our goal in terms of how we're going to contribute to the global effort to slow down global warming. Korea recently has finalized its goal, right?
That's correct.
By year 2030, in terms of BAU, business as usual base, we will reduce our greenhouse gas reduction by 37%. Professor Kim, what do you see in terms of like this number, 37%? I think it surprised some people when the number came out.
That is correct. 37% is very aggressive target in terms of what we're doing right now, meaning that we have to do a lot of new activities to achieve 37% target. Out of 37%, 25.7% we plan to achieve those reductions through domestic activities.
At home in Korea.
At home in Korea. And about 11.3% we plan to buy those greenhouse gas reduction credit from other countries.
Right, right.
But I believe that achieving even 25.7% domestic target, we have to change a lot of different activities. There are significant changes in energy, national energy policy recently. We used to focus only on energy supply and also economic energy supply. However, now we have a bigger objectives. One, greenhouse gas reduction. And second, we have to create new jobs, we have to create new industry. So these two new agenda becoming more important objectives for national energy policy. And while submitting 37% greenhouse gas reduction plan, which is aggressive, that now we have to make a lot of effort in terms of creating new energy industry, revitalizing our renewable energy, introducing electronic vehicles to Korea, and energy storage system, those smart grid, those interesting new developments in energy industry, we have to make a lot of efforts. And Korean government, and in this regime, they now becoming very serious about these changes.
Talking about new industries being created, such as, you had a long list of these new industries. Let's start with smart grid, for instance. In Korea, recently they were talking about government spending about 30 billion won in terms of assisting the development of smart grid industry. Can you explain what the idea is, Dr. Park?
First of all, everybody talk about smart grid. It's a wonderful idea, and we need some kind of new direction we need to follow.
What is smart grid? Our viewers may wonder what smart grid is.
Smart grid is kind of the bilateral trading, the interactive trading about energy. That is based on the ICT. The problem is the real result of a smart grid is not so strong than we expected.
I see.
Yeah, the problem is even though
at this point. Okay,
so
you're most focused on current status.
Yeah, because
okay, that's good. That's important.
Because
economics, right?
In the Professor Kim talk about the Jeju Island.
Right.
Jeju Island is very wonderful place for the try to test bed for the smart grid, and we have some kind of result. But some experts have a big concern about in Jeju Island smart grid too, because even though we try to get some kind of desirable result from the smart grid, still we don't have institutional framework for that, for the support for the smart grid.
I see.
So then for the invigorate smart grid, we need flexible price of electricity. That is a big problem. To have a flexible price of electricity, we need a market.
I see.
But unfortunately, still, we don't have market.
So it's like a chicken and egg. Which one comes first?
Yeah.
You're going to have industry to have the market, but you need market first to have the industry. Like which one comes first?
Yeah.
That's
So, but everybody talk about to invigorate the smart grid market, we need more participation from the private sector.
Right.
Private enterprise knows best.
Meaning that the private entities that are willing to produce their own energy based on their own wind turbine or solar panels, right?
Or
the suppliers
kind of
the
trading.
energy. Right.
Yeah.
And
so,
also the buyers.
Buyer, the producer, and the buyer, both. Yeah. But my point is that to make the smart grid market to expand, the market needs some kind of less uncertainty, also more profit. But under this system, so no domestic kind of the wholesale or the retail market of electricity. Under this situation, the private sector company does not have any incentive to enter the market. At this time, why they enter? Because of the policy or some kind of a special subsidy, something like that.
Let's broaden our focus here a little bit, Professor Kim Sang-hyup. The overall green energy industry, as I mentioned, you're one of the main architects of green growth for Korea. What's the big view going over smart grid, the size of the market we see and the picture we see for the future?
Well, to your question, I like to say that Jeju smart green project is not 100% perfect. It needs more development, sophistication. But during that short period of time, that pilot project reached to an advanced level. The world is surprised. And recently I met with the Jeremy Rifkin, the most famous
author.
Author and thought leader. And he believes that if you can acquire renewables, smart grid, or energy internet, and green transport and green buildings all together, you are going to be a winner for the next industrial revolution. It will take time and a huge amount of efforts. But what I'm saying is, this is not just for the game of today, but for the future. We will embrace the future by addressing these challenges in an innovative way. That's the idea of green growth.
That is a critical point, because we have to keep in mind the current economics of the current condition on one hand, and then also we have to have a vision for the longer future, and that's the trick we have to play, balancing it.
Let me also give you a number. A recent study done by McKinsey. What we include those 4 things: renewables, electric vehicle, energy storage system, and smart grid. The market will be $1 trillion within 5 years.
$1 trillion. Okay.
Yes. There is already a market which is growing very rapidly. $1 trillion opportunity will be made.
We want to have a debate
by the year
here.
2020.
Okay, I love
we
this
cannot
debate.
miss it.
I fully agree with the vision which the Professor Kim suggests. But the problem is institutional framework.
I see.
So
and
my
that is
point,
important.
that is very important because
and that is what Chairman Kim Hee-jip is doing right now.
So we have a perfect set of guests here.
Yes,
correct.
So in Europe, in America, there is a very, very flexible market for the electricity.
You're right.
So under that,
Since when?
1990s.
1990s.
In the 1990s, there is a big kind of trend for kind of a reform of electricity market.
So we got to play a catch-up game now.
Yeah, but unfortunately, in 1990s, we tried to get some kind of drive, but early 2000, we got stuck because of not economical, but political reason.
I see.
So then now still kind of the same situation. But the problem is, if we want realize that kind of vision, we need, especially government, need to provide institutional framework because only government can provide it.
We have to move on to a next topic area. This is such a huge issue area, so we have to move quickly here. Let's talk about the greenhouse gas reduction. on an international and regional basis here. China, of course, is one of the is the biggest emitter of greenhouse gas. What is China doing in terms of like reducing greenhouse gas, and what is China doing in terms of like creating regional cooperation?
I had a chance to observe the conversation made by President Xi Jinping and former President Lee Myung-bak. They had more than about 90-minute conversation.
Right.
And you wouldn't believe this. More than half of the conversation was about climate change, environment, and energy.
And this was several years ago.
Yeah, several years ago.
Okay.
And
there was China's commitment.
His biggest commitment for China is making eco-civilization. And he is creating a new energy system revolution.
Right.
And he really truly believes China will not just cutting emissions, but also creating green businesses. So China is now changing their position.
How do we evaluate their goal of cutting like 60 to 65% of emission from the 2005 level by what, year 2030? Is this making sense? Is this reasonable?
Yeah.
Can they do that?
They can.
They can?
Definitely.
It's about carbon intensity, not
so then,
absolute term.
As the Professor Kim told,
GDP intensity.
GDP and carbon energy intensity.
It's
not
they kind
just
of
absolute
term.
intensity.
Intensity,
Right.
CO2 intensity term. The Professor Kim already told the kind of the change of direction of the economic growth in China.
Right.
Not just manufacturing, but also the green business.
Right.
So then they think that the green business is kind of a new growth engine in the future. So then they already change, and then they already from the 12th and 11th five-year plan, at the time they emphasized energy conservation so much. Not just economically, but politically. Very big push.
So there has been drive.
Yeah, very big drive. So then every expert think that in the 2030, they can reduce like the 60-65%. It's natural.
Okay.
Yeah. So then comparing to our 37%, definitely easier in China. The Korean case, 37 is very tougher, but their direction, their economic policy and energy policy definitely can provide this kind of reduction in the future.
Well, we are running short on time, so let's get back to your point right after this one. We have a video clip prepared on the issue of the need for greenhouse gas reduction and the issues of how different countries are trying on this. So let's take a look at this, and then we'll carry on our conversation right after this. Well, you know, we've been having this fascinating conversation here, so many different subjects to cover, but there are really more important ones than others. For instance, the idea of super grid. I mean, smart grid we covered, but super grid, that covers the region. What some people call it mega grid. That seems to be happening in Northeast Asia as well. But first of all, who will explain the idea of super grid, mega grid?
I will explain. Super grid among China, Korea, Japan, and hopefully including Russia and North Korea, meaning that we connect the electricity grid, the transmission lines together, so we can share different countries share the electricity together. One good example is the European market. Europe is already connected. Germany, Denmark, France. And those countries, they already share. They have a one grid system.
Is there what they call Nordic EU super grid?
That's correct. Okay. That's correct. And if we can create that type of grid among China, Korea, Japan, Russia, and North Korea, I think that we can optimize our energy uses, and we can use cheap energies from Russia, like hydropower, cheap energy, solar and wind power from China.
Right.
And Korea and Japan, we can provide a lot of technical equipments and generation facilities together. And this could be a great cooperation and probably the best peace tool that I can think of.
So
among those
basically,
countries.
this is the same idea applied to different levels, like a small island microgrid, nationwide smart grid, and then different
Across
countries,
nations.
the super grid.
That's correct. That's
then
correct.
Northeast Asian super grid, how far have we come? I think we have some graphics ready to put on the screen on our back here to explain North Korean super grid, but how far have we come so far?
So far, not much.
Not much. Not much.
Okay,
So
the
then
idea is there.
Yeah. So then many idea, many planning, many feasibility study, but still not much.
The study had started from the 1990s?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so a long time. But the problem is the kind of how to set up the institutional framework for this kind of supergrid. In terms of hardware, no problem.
I see.
But the big problem is software.
Politics.
Politics and software. The overall the software. Yeah. So then whenever we think about supergrid, we need the provider and the consumer. We think that Russia and Mongolia is a provider, and that China, Korea, and Japan are consumer.
Right. So altogether 6 countries.
Yeah. But that all 3 countries, Korea, China, Japan, has some kind of the problem for the institutional framework for the receiving the electricity from overseas.
What are some of the differences in interest?
It is making sense, and even KEPCO, the Korean electricity company, had feasibility studies, and it is making sense economically. Right. The only hurdle is North Korea. East Asia is the only region where electricity is not connected or integrated.
I see.
The reason for why Germany is so aggressive in building new energy system is they can, even abolishing nuclear power plant, they can import energy, electricity, from neighboring countries.
They don't have North Korea in Europe.
Yeah, they don't have North Korea in Europe. As far as electricity is concerned, Korea is almost like an island. Like Japan.
So, okay, that's why North Korea is used.
And one day I had a meeting with the chairman of Son Jung-hee, the chairman of SoftBank.
SoftBank, right.
And he himself made a comprehensive study about the possibility and feasibility of the East Asia supergrid. He didn't give me a detailed calculation, but economically making sense.
So all these people have different ideas.
Yeah.
The only hurdle is diplomatic imagination and political leadership.
Right.
So because of that kind of hurdle, there is much discussion about without North Korea, how to build supergrid. So then one of the issue is connect to the China to Korea directly, from Qingdao to the Incheon, something like that.
So with this idea of smart grid, we can bypass the different regions and all that kind of stuff. We have to run out of time, professors and doctors here. It's too bad. Maybe we should have a second round of discussion someday in the near future, because this is such an important topic. I want to thank you big time for your wonderful comments and insights this time. And definitely we want to have you back in near future, as I said. And also we want to thank our viewers who have joined us from all around the world for our discussion today. And definitely we want to see you back next time in this program, Upfront. Until then, goodbye.